Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. And we're having a bit of technical difficulty here trying to get my list up. Not sure what's going on there. Hang on. Okay, almost there. For some reason, Chrome decided to slow down on me for no good reason. Alright, so last night we started out looking at an interview with some dickhead associated with Has about the MAGA communism grift. So one option is we continue on with that. We've also got some stuff from the Quad that could be quite good, or there's Caleb Muppet talks about Marxism and creativity, which, I mean, he's a great person to talk about that because he has a very creative way of defining Marxism. And I'm kind of inclined, we haven't done Caleb in a little bit, I'm kind of inclined to check that out, but I am willing to have my mind changed. How's everybody doing, chat? No one knows where this is called. This is from his Portland visit to CPI Mark II. Then we've got preeminent Holocaust scholar. October 7th is a turning point in American anti-Semitism. We've got Loserbox on Israel. We've got Fighting for Israel in an Age of Identity Politics. Let's see. Trump is so much worse than Biden on Israel. That's with Xanderhole, who yesterday showed us what in one ear and out the other in real time actually looks like, where he, in an effort to try to make the point that the economy is so great under Biden, read us aloud an entire article on how actually for most people the economy sucks, and then took the fact that the very last paragraph in the article was how to somehow spin this for Biden, and decided that was the entire point. Hello, Adria. I'm kind of curious about Marxism and creativity. I think we'll start out with that one. Why not? Right. Marxism and creativity. From the guy who, he has read like 2 paragraphs of Marx. So, I mean, he legit does know what he's talking about. Like, real Marx scholar here. Ah, come on, load, would you? Everything's being quite slow and annoying.
That without the light and the optimism that Caleb and the Center for Political Innovation offers, and that
The light and the optimism
innovation offers, and that
the
perspective,
Creepy Pricks International.
I really don't know where I would be.
Probably someplace better.
I might be lost. I might be confused. That's the general picture.
God, this is pathetic.
But I think sometimes when you're involved in anti-imperialism and you're involved with the kind of work that we do as anti-imperialists, for as long as someone like Caleb has, you tend to rack up a bit of a resume. So
let's hear his resume. Are we going to talk about that one time that... I mean, first of all, I mean, this is just so fucking cultish. You know, this is just literally just trying to talk up the great leader, which is really hard to do when the great leader is Caleb Maupin, and his resume is just... Yeah, well, there's nothing particularly exciting. Well, he went to Yemen once, and he met with...
Take a second, and let's just go over a few of the things that he's accomplished in his years as an activist. In 2010, 2 black activists were acquitted because Caleb went to their court...
This is 14 years ago, and how many people have done this?
...case, and he showed footage that he had...
I'd love to know what these 2... Let me... Hang on a second.
Because...
Jabrona. That's her name. And I would... First of all, leaving aside... Did he get... I mean, he's just using her name like this. I mean, I guess it is in the public domain, but still. You have to wonder what she has to say about this. Does she know she's being used like this to make him into some kind of fucking hero?
Caleb went to their court case, and he showed footage that he had of police brutalizing them, and showed that basically, you know, they were being charged with assaulting a police officer. He showed that they didn't do it. That was in Cleveland.
Wow, so he had a phone with him in Cleveland.
During Occupy Wall Street, he was the official media spokesperson for the great anti-imperialist.
Is he official media spokesperson?
Ramsey Clark.
Oh, they're not going to show the speech that he gave to an audience of people who were not listening, where he acted like he was the first person in Occupy to notice that there is class struggle?
In 2015, he participated in a humanitarian mission to Yemen with the Red Crescent Society, creating an international incident. It was covered in The Guardian.
Well, like, I'm guessing he wasn't the only person on the bus?
Mainstream media even picked up on it. That's pretty big. And the very next year, our favorite president, Donald Trump, named Caleb his favorite reporter.
Like, who the fuck thinks that this is a good look? He's, like, literally the closest thing to something that you can say is... Like, there's not a single struggle that you can say that he's led, you know. Yeah, it's not like he organized a winning strike or something like that, or anything. It's just like random shit that like hundreds of people at the very least can say they've done.
So, without further ado, let's welcome the ideological leader of the Center for Political Innovation,
who assures us that he no longer has any control over the finances of the founded CPI. Not that he did anything untoward with the money the last time, but he did make sure to assure us all that this time he wouldn't have access.
I'm proud to call a mentor and a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Caleb Maupin.
I meant to be recording this. Yeah, I mean, it's just a handful of people getting excited at this point. And remember, one of the things that people who left the first version of the CPI explained is that they would do practices. They would practice getting excited around whenever Caleb Maupin's name was mentioned or entered the room in order to create an atmosphere of, like, reverence for him. Totally normal thing to do. God, it's such a boring fucking name.
And stretch a little bit, because we're getting near the end of our program.
Well, that's a relief.
Could be a long night. Could be a long night. Names and locations. Names and locations, everybody. Names and locations. Oh, boy.
Wait, was that an IWW shirt?
Names and locations. Names and
Yeah. That's an IW, like, you'd hope that people in the Wobblies would have a little bit more standards. You know?
Oh, boy. Alright. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Alright.
Yeah, this is him being funny.
Wow.
Actually, this is like the loosest I think I've seen him.
This is our first national convention of the Center for Political Innovation. And I'm...
Well, not exactly. He's just pretending that the first attempt didn't happen.
I would like Elizabeth to stand up. Yes. Because there's a very important issue.
And no, he has no embarrassment switch.
There's a very important issue that we've been discussing with the board of directors. And that is that we have determined, after intense debate and negotiation, that one does not have to have red hair in order to be in the leadership of the Center for Political Innovation. We will allow non-gingers into leadership. It is...
Is this... So basically what he's saying is this is how fucking white his board of directors is?
It's allowed. You're going to be careful, though, but it'll be allowed. But in all seriousness, you guys have no idea how much work Elizabeth has done. You really have no idea. I just found out today that she personally made every single one.
Oh, God, I mean, okay, so then they have these, like, cheap-ass scarves. That's the uniform, apparently. These fucking, these not very nice scarves.
Each one of those represents 10 hours of work from Elizabeth.
Is that Huey Long there? Okay, I don't recognize everybody here. I believe that's Huey Long that is closest to the ladder. Not sure about the person to the left.
10 hours. And
well, that is a really shitty likeness of Fred Hampton. Oh, that's William Z. Foster. Yeah, that is Huey Long. You can just barely see. The light isn't really good on these names. But that's supposed to be Fred Hampton, which I never would have guessed.
We have had an amazing event. Elizabeth found this
venue. I mean, who to name a more epic duo? Huey Long and Fred Hampton.
She did so much, so we are in deep, deep appreciation to all that she has done. not just for this convention, but for this organization. We are proud to call her our president. This is the leader of the Center for Political Innovation right here, Elizabeth Young.
Wait, she's the leader, but he's the ideological leader. What exactly does that mean?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, there's
Now,
one black dude.
Everyone who's wearing a red scarf, could you please stand up? Yeah? These are the members of the CPI who helped put on and convene the conference. And we decided to get red scarves. And we also have buttons. Buttons. Does someone have
Remember
buttons?
how,
The button here, it says,
there's Peter Coffin. There's Peter Coffin. We know some good takes are incoming then. One of the things that he made people do, who he was landlording over in that hotel in Jersey City, was go around selling these shitty buttons.
Anna Louise Strong Brigade. That's what we decided to call the members of the CPI that came to town to convene the conference. That's Anna Louise Strong. And this is an American that so many people don't know anything about. She's a name that's kind of been written out of the history books.
Okay. Anna Louise Strong. Now I'm curious. Okay. Wrote a thesis called The Social Psychology of Prayer, joined the National Child Labor Committee. Okay, then she moved to the Soviet Union in 1921. Found Moscow News. Okay, this is interesting. So the Soviet Union, okay, she was so supportive of the Chinese Communist Party with Mao Zedong that she was expelled possibly from the USSR in 1949 on claims that she was a U.S. spy. Yeah, this charge was apparently later repeated by the Soviet newspaper Izvestia. Like... Wait, okay, let's see. One thing that she did was won a case in the U.S. Supreme Court to get her passport back. And mostly her thing was like supporting the Chinese Communist Party. Hello, River Rune.
But she's been pivotal, not just in the history of this country, but in the history of the world. Anna Louise Strong was from this part of the country and was a key leader of the Seattle General Strike of 1919.
Was she? I mean, not impossible, but I don't actually... Anna Louise Strong, Seattle General Strike. Okay. No, you don't need my precise location for a search on the Seattle General Strike. Google. Yeah, okay. People other than Caleb Maupin also say she was one of the leaders, so okay, that's something.
She was the main journalist for the Union Record, which was the wobbly labor paper in Seattle. And then, after the strike was defeated, she heard about this new country that was created called the Soviet Union, and she...
It's interesting how he does not hold the fact that she was a wobbly against her. I would not actually expect that Caleb Maupin would have much sympathy for the Wobs. of which I am one, I should
went
note.
over there and saw what they were achieving, the amazing things that they were achieving. She came back to the United States and wrote books about it and went on speaking tours about it. And eventually, she moved to Moscow, and she was the editor of the Moscow News, which was the English language newspaper that they had in Moscow in the 1930s. So I like to say she was RT before RT. She's old school RT right here. This is old school RT.
Yeah, which is funny because
Annalise Strong.
actually, if you, I've recommended his stuff before, and it's definitely worthwhile. Andrei Rudoy, or Viesnik Bury, has done some very interesting deep dives into the way the Soviet Union is presented in contemporary Russian media and school textbooks and stuff like that. And let me just say, it's not favorable. I don't know that Anna Louise Strong would necessarily want to be associated with RT. Even though she did make a break with the Soviet Union.
China, and she interviewed Mao Zedong, and it was in her interview with Mao that Mao first used the phrase paper tigers to describe the imperialists. She was not loved in this country due to McCarthyism, so she spent her final years in China. And in China, she was known as the paper tiger lady, and Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai and other key leaders of the Chinese Communist Party would come over to her house all the time to consult with her on politics. Really comprehended economics and political theory. She was also deeply poetic. Her writing is deeply beautiful, and it was discovering her writing as a teenager. I discovered her autobiography, I Changed Worlds, her memoir of living in...
Are we gonna be talking about everybody else here too? Are we gonna hear his PNs to Huey Long, who described his whole policy of clientelism as a way to undercut communism?
In the Soviet Union, called the Stalin era, her writing, the Soviets expected it, about World War II. She wrote so much about the socialist movement and what it's about. And everything she wrote, she brought with it a spirit of Americanism.
I wonder if she would agree that she brought with it a spirit of Americanism. Whatever the fuck a spirit of Americanism is, I'm guessing maybe it was not something that she would necessarily feel identified with.
She was not ashamed to be an American. She knew this country did a lot of evil things, but there was Americanism that just flowed through everything that she wrote.
Maybe you could give us an example, Caleb. Oh, one mask at the fucking CPI cult meeting. A surge mask, but nonetheless, nice to see it.
Been left out of U.S. history wrote. And this was at the time that great Seattle general strike was happening. This is what she wrote. This is an editorial she wrote for the Seattle Union.
What's with his mic? Why is the sound so much clearer when he's holding the fucking microphone, when he stands over by those portraits, than it is when he stands over here by the CPI banner?
Record. She said, "We are undertaking the most tremendous move ever made by labor in this country. A move that will lead no one knows where. We do not need hysteria. We need the iron march of labor. Labor will feed the people. 12 great kitchens have been offered, and from them food will be distributed and provision trades at low cost to all. Labor will care for the babies and the sick, the milk wagon drivers."
This is what's called the socialization of care, which is a big part of what Marx referred to as the abolition of the family, which Caleb Maupin has said is un-Marxist. He feels that Marx's idea that the family should be abolished is un-Marxist.
Laundry drivers are arranging plans for supplying milk to babies, invalids, and hospitals, and taking care of linen for the hospitals. Labor will preserve order.
Where's the Americanism in this? I mean, it sounds actually very strong, proletarian vibes in it. Very cool, absolutely based what she's saying there. I mean, the Seattle General Strike was absolutely a brilliant episode in the history of the working class movements of the U.S., certainly. But where's the Americanism? Like, we were promised Americanism here. Because for some reason, that is what we're supposed to be talking about.
The strike committee is arranging for guards and is expected that the stopping of the cars will keep people...
He means, like, U.S. nationalism. Oh, yeah, he can't paraphrase. He absolutely can't paraphrase. Although in this case, I'm actually kind of okay with it because I was hoping that he would provide some example of something she said that there was some Americanism in so we could actually see what the fuck he's talking about. And, I mean, it's really sort of confirming I'm not hearing it. But, like, do we really need the full length of the thing? Like, I mean, she's, like, describing all of the preparations, all the stuff that's available to sustain people through the strike. But, like, do we need this in this quote? I mean, the strike actually happened a while ago. We're not going to eat at these kitchens.
People at home, let them get this straight. It is not the withdrawal of labor power.
Actually, I mean, one thing to note is that MAGA communism is like the Nazgul thing that his rivals are doing. Like, people who actually fell out with him over the most, in the most ridiculous ways imaginable. Like Has, for example, who had no problem with the exploitation and, like, sexually exploiting cult members and all that shit. Cool with that. But, the fact that there was, like, kink involved, was where he drew the line. And, I mean, just, it's like dodgy fuckers who decided that they would actually do better without Caleb Maupin. But it's the same bullshit.
But the power of workers to manage that will win this strike. The closing down of Seattle's industries, a mere shutdown, will not affect these Eastern gentlemen very much. They could let the whole Northwest go to pieces as far as money alone is concerned. But the closing...
This is not, I mean, and again, like, how's he going to bring this over to fucking Huey? Is he going to tell us about Huey Long? That's what I am here for at this point.
Controlled industries in Seattle, while the workers organize to feed the people, to care for the babies and the sick, and to preserve order. This will move them. For this looks too much like the taking of power
same
by
grift,
workers.
different cult.
Labor will not only shut down the industries, labor will reopen. And that is why they say that we are starting out on a road that leads no one knows where. That's
I think that some people probably know where.
Talking about how the potential of the strike wasn't going to be from creating disorder, wasn't going to be from creating chaos.
Oh, now we're going to get his gloss on this. As a guy who's very clearly not particularly interested in the idea that the workers should actually control production, very carefully avoids that in Marx. I mean, it's like I can't wait to see what he does to take this through his de-revolutionizer. Because he takes, like, we've seen him do it with Marx, we've seen him do it with a few other people. He takes, like, actually fairly revolutionary ideas and strips them of everything that is somehow inconsistent with maintaining capitalism.
Chaos, it would be about the new, beautiful order that emerged when working people stepped up and started taking responsibility and taking participation in the leadership of their society. That the strike would preserve and present a new order. That's what she was writing
Not
about.
Preserve a new order. Like, the whole point was that it could potentially get rid of the existing order and replace it with something. That's not preserving a new order. And also...
Anna Louise Strong. And we live in an age where there's so much pessimism. And a lot has been said about this. I won't be the person to make this comparison.
Yeah, he's never the first person to do anything.
But the time period we're living in is a lot like the lead up to the First World War. Because war brings out the worst in people. And it makes people hopeless.
So what, the lead up to war brings out the lead up to the worst in people?
Humanity It makes people question what it's all worth. And there's a poem that they used to make boomers memorize in school. They don't do that anymore. That's the thing they used to do, is they used to make...
Wait. I'm Gen X. We had to memorize poems sometimes. Like...
kids memorize poems in school. And there's one poem they used to make kids memorize, and because it was so widely taught in school, people make fun of it a lot. So you've probably heard people reference it. And it goes like this. I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree.
Actually, I believe my English teachers made fun of this poem on many occasions. I don't think we ever had to read it. Like, what the hell does this have to do with anything, though?
A tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast. A tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray. A tree that may, in summer, wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosoms snow has lain.
Like, what's the point? How does this follow from the Seattle General Strike?
Who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. You ever hear that poem before?
Yeah.
Well, that was written by Joyce Kilmer, and Joyce Kilmer was shot in the head during World War I. And that poem expressed the pessimism of the age.
What? What? Oh, that poem. Okay. That poem expressed the pessimism of the age? That did not strike me. Chat, help me out here. Am I wrong, or did that not seem like a very pessimistic poem? I mean, especially compared to, we're talking about poems around the World War I era. There are lots more pessimistic poems from that period. That's a poem about how trees are lovely, actually. What the fuck? So, we've gone from him not finding the Americanism that permeates Anna Louise Strong's writing to the pessimism of the beauty of trees, which is interesting when you consider that he's kind of very anti-environmental. So maybe this is pessimistic. Maybe it's pessimistic because he would like to see it being burned in a wood-burning generator or some shit. It's not contributing to carbon emissions.
Just the belief that all this technological advancement, all this progress, wasn't really leading to a beautiful new world. Instead, it was just giving us new weapons with which to kill each other.
Where's that in the fucking poem? There are so many poems that actually say these things. There are, where's that in the poem? Is this the abridged version? And if it's abridged, why did he leave out this bit? Because I didn't hear it in here.
New technology with which to gun each other down. It was looking to nature, looking with defeat at humanity. Only God can make a tree. Looking at human progress, looking at the...
Where's human progress in there? Where? Technology isn't even in the poem. It doesn't take any position on it at all. Maybe the author of the poem also wrote other things that might be more suited to this argument, though I have no idea.
The idea that we can advance as a species with pessimism and cynicism and hopelessness. It's a cry of defeat.
Where?
And, as I said, war...
It is... Where's the cry of defeat? It's just a sappy poem about a tree.
Brings out the worst in people.
Okay, first of all... Okay, the poem Poem about the tree. A poem lovely as a tree. When was that written? 1913. Let me see. That was written in... Okay. It was published in 1915. Okay, Joyce Kilmer. When did Joyce Kilmer actually go to war? Oh, okay, the poem about the trees? That was published in 1913. The war wasn't going on yet. The war literally could not have brought this out in him. Let's see. Yeah, he wasn't even in the war. Yeah, well, he's from the U.S., so obviously he wasn't in the war until the U.S. joined it. But, so, like, how is a poem written 1 year before World War I started an example of how war brings out the worst in people? I mean, and how is that evidenced by the fact that he got killed in a war that hadn't happened yet when he wrote the poem? Like, what is any of this?
You know, my grandfather, he fought in the Second World War.
And he didn't write anything about trees. He didn't say anything pessimistic about how nice trees are and shit. He wrote he wrote poems about coal generators.
Went into the U.S. Marine Corps. He was from a small town in Missouri, and he and all the other young men from his small town in rural Missouri, they went into the U.S. Marine Corps. And my grandfather hated the U.S. Marine Corps. And he would see a billboard for the Marines, or he would hear the Marine anthem, and he would get angry. He would visibly angry. He hated the basic training that they went through. It was very brutal.
What did he think of the tree poem? Like, this is so fucking disjointed. They prepare so much, like, training people to applaud him and stuff, but he does not bother to make sure that there's any kind of narrative. Wait a second. Now I understand. Because his, like, attack on the people who came forward about all the fucked up shit that was going on in CPI Mark 1, part of his accusation towards them was that it had to be untoward because there was a narrative flow. And I understand this now, because narrative flow is not a sort of sorcery he has mastered.
And he went through basic training, and they gave him an IQ intelligence, test, and he tested pretty high, and so they switched him into the U.S. Navy, and he was an officer in the U.S. Navy. So then after the war, he went to meet up with all the young men who had fought with him in the U.S. Marines. But he couldn't meet with them because they were all dead.
Well, then who organized the fucking meeting? He went to what did he call the meeting? And nobody RSVP'd and he went anyway? How?
All of them had died except for one. And he met with the one surviving member of his unit in the U.S. Marines. And the guy was visibly not well. And in the conversation they had when they had dinner, he bragged to my grandfather about all the gold that he had pulled out of the teeth of Japanese corpses during the war. And my grandfather...
Lovely. I mean, that's wonderful. See, that is the sort of thing that comes of writing poems that are kind of sappy about how nice trees are. That's what happens. I mean, one minute you're writing fucking poems that are a little bit cheesy about how nice trees are, and that one thing leads to another, and writing those kinds of fucking poems will have you removing gold teeth from people, apparently.
I heard that, and he was just hurt by that. But my grandfather was in the U.S. Navy. He was a Navy officer during the war, and he also told us the story.
He told us that.
Of how one day he was getting his hair cut, and he was getting his hair cut, and a torpedo hit the front of his ship, blew the front of the ship off. And then, as he was right there getting his hair cut,
Jesus, okay.
Gas-
That sounds like did the scissors... He was getting his hair cut and a torpedo hits the ship? Like, did he get hurt from that? I'm just sitting here imagining that would not be... Like, how steady is the barber holding those scissors? When they're getting hit by a torpedo.
as a torpedo came through the wall and didn't explode. Right there as he was getting his hair cut, and it didn't go off. And in that moment, he thought he was going to die, and a couple men had died when the torpedo hit the front of the ship, and he survived.
What the fuck does this have to do with anything? We've gone from the Seattle General Strike to the fact that you die in a war 5 years later causes you to write, previous to that, really sappy tree poetry that people make fun of for a century afterwards. And now, what? I mean, yeah, torpedo fucks up his haircut? Like, what the hell? What?
And my grandfather, the visceral hatred he had for the U.S. Marine Corps, that was a result of seeing the very same things that motivated Joyce Kilmer, the very same things that Rosa Luxemburg
Joyce Kilmer
wrote
hadn't
about.
seen that shit yet. Joyce Kilmer had not seen any of those things when he wrote the tree poem. He wrote the tree poem in 1913. He didn't even go off to war till 1917. What the fuck is this guy on about? And now we've got, what, Rosa Luxemburg?
Describing when she wrote about socialism or barbarism. She said that imperialism left unhinged up to its natural capacity would lead to desolation, degeneration, depopulation, and a great cemetery in Europe. It would lead to civilizations coming apart. She was describing...
What? That, I need somebody to provide me a diagram of this talk.
What Friedrich Nietzsche talks about when he talks about the blonde beast, and how by becoming a colonizer and an imperialist, the Western man was losing any pretense of being...
Yeah, people who, quote Nietzsche favorably are famously the sort of people you definitely want to listen to.
Civilized, any moral code. It was becoming the law of the jungle once again. Might makes right. Cruelty, the thriving of the most sadistic and vicious elements. That's what imperialism was leading to. And in imperialist wars, we see that ugliness come out. And that's what drives a lot of the...
Jesus. What... How did we get here? I've had fever dreams with better continuity than this fucking talk.
That we saw in the lead up to the First World War. But Marxism is the opposite of that. Marxism is a celebration of human creativity.
Yeah, I mean, that's wonderful. How did anyone else get whiplash just now?
Frederick Engels.
How the fuck does anyone make him the cult leader? He literally cannot give a speech. These are prepared remarks, mind you. He's looking at notes. And there is zero flow to this shit.
He said, the animal merely uses its environment and brings about changes in it simply by its presence.
Yeah, which now we know actually there are a fair number of animals other than us who use tools. At least occasionally. I mean, and not just primates either. It turns out crows can do, at least some crows can do some fairly interesting stuff with tools.
But man, by his changes, makes it serve his ends, masters it.
I mean, beavers come to mind as well.
This is the final distinction between man and other animals.
Like, chat, am I the only one who doesn't know how the hell we got here? Okay, so Seattle General Strike, Americanism, I mean, then the tree thing, which was just proof that war brings the worst things out in people, because apparently thinking trees are pretty is pessimistic. And writing a tree poem 4 years before you go off to a war that hasn't started yet, is proof that the war brings out the worst in people. Like, what? Like, and now it's like, oh well, and apropos Marxism.
And it is labor that brings about this distinction. What's he saying there? He's saying that ants have been making their ant farms the same way for thousands
I don't think they're called ant farms, actually.
of years. Beavers have been making their beaver dams the same way for thousands of years. But in just 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years, human beings have gone from hunter-gatherers in the woods to space travel and iPhones.
I don't think that Engels was talking about space travel and iPhones, actually. But then, I mean, we already had this thing where the tree poem is the result of a war that hadn't happened yet, bringing out the worst in a poet.
And we are constantly reinventing our relationship with our environment. We are
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Maupin, for example, is constantly reinventing his relationship with reality.
constantly expanding our population, expanding our living standard, providing a more comfortable life. And that this is what makes human beings unique, is that we are constantly reinventing our relationship with nature to build a better life. And
It's hilarious. It's fascinating. Fascinating. Like, this is his whole takeaway from the entire works of Marx and Engels. Yeah, you know, surplus value, never heard of it. Yeah, fucking, the labor theory of value, never heard of it. Capital, what's that? But, so, this is, like, he takes the most actually really banal observation that a lot of people, I mean, this is hardly unique to Marx and Engels to say, this is what makes humans different. I think you will find that that is actually a very widespread sentiment that you will find in the literature.
Species that we're aware of anywhere in the universe is capable of doing what human beings are capable of doing. This is a godlike creative power that other species do not have. And that's something to celebrate. And that's something to be optimistic about. And Marxism teaches us that hunter-gatherers.
Now I'm kind of wondering what was just cut out. Like, how, if this was, okay, we've seen what was left in. How much did something have to suck to have been cut out of this thing? And so artfully, too, you can barely see it. It's like when Israel does those videos where they're supposed to be showing that actually, like, a cesspool is actually a Hamas command and control center, and the cut, you just barely notice it. Like, I mean, you know, it's just the screen resolution changes and the camera works totally different because it's gone from a drone camera to a handheld and stuff. Like, just so artfully done. This is so random.
Civilization was around for a long time, but we got too good at hunter-gatherer.
The ants are farming themselves out. Lol, ant serfdom. Yes, indeed. Yeah, I mean, he has a very creative relationship with the narrative form.
With our sticks and rocks, we were killing animals pretty effectively. With our ability to track, plants grow, our ability to gather.
There's another cut. What did he fucking... Like, how badly did he fuck this up?
Fruits and nuts, we got good at it. So there was
The editor's like, I do not envy the editor, first of all, because they clearly gave up on the idea of trying to make this make sense. Because you would have to just completely butcher the chronology to make that happen. But just, I mean, you can just see when the editor was like, yeah, I can't even with this.
Scarcity, so we reinvented our relationship with nature, and we started growing our own crops and domesticating animals. We reinvented our relationship to get to a higher mode. And feudalism was an outmoded system, so again, we had...
Wait, and we just jumped up to feudalism. This is the first time feudalism has been mentioned, and it's already an outmoded system.
Another social revolution to get us to a higher mode of existence so we could create and build better things. And Marxism has us understanding what the...
That is not, I mean, this is not... This is such a ridiculous way of reading, because, I mean, like, he's just surgically removing class struggle. Because it wasn't that people were saying, you know, we need to have feudalism because we can make better stuff. I mean, like, it's a technology tree in Civilization 6. Well, if we get feudalism, you know, that means that we can start making crossbows. Like, the whole point was that there was, like, that there was class struggle that brought about these changes because because these forms of production had already sort of created their gravediggers. Yeah, not all humans did feudalism. No, I mean, the thing is, Peter Coffin... There's a lot that I will not give Peter Coffin credit for, but they do know how to edit a video. Peter Coffin's video editing skills are actually not bad. But, like, Peter Coffin's productions generally are way more polished than anything that's on Caleb Muppet's channel. Complete asshole. Horrible takes, but knows how to edit a video at least.
Problem that we're in right now
is just
because we need to be very clear about what is driving the crisis. This is one thing that it's basic Marxism.
The crisis, which he's never actually, like, the crisis. You know, you're supposed to actually say what the crisis is, and then we can talk about what's... Like, there's no antecedent here. There's no, like, there's zero flow. This is constipation, the speech.
If you read old pamphlets from the 1930s, if you asked Anna Louise Strong or William Z. Foster or Huey Long or even Fred Hampton,
Or even Fred Hampton, like, what is the idea is that those four people would all have the same answer to what the crisis is, or even whether there is one? Huey Long, Anna Louise Strong, Fred Hampton, William Z. Foster. I mean, totally just all ideologically enmeshed.
They would tell you this in a heartbeat. They knew this stuff. They knew it like the back of their hand. But no one talks this way anymore, except for the...
Well, what would they say?
Center for Political Innovation. We're the only ones that talk about this. The communist parties around the world that make up the World Anti-Imperialist Platform, they say in their documents that the crisis facing society is a crisis of overproduction.
Wait, okay, which is it? You're the only ones who say this? Or nobody else is saying that? Or everybody else is saying this? And I just find it hilarious that he's decided to get so obsessive about overproduction after being utterly pantsed by Thought Slime for saying that, yeah, acknowledging that there is overproduction in capitalism means you're a Malthusian.
That's what it is, and it's pretty basic, which is that the capitalist is constantly trying to produce as many goods as he possibly can, and pay the worker as little as he possibly can in the process of doing it. And then the worker doesn't have enough to buy back what he produces. And in a rational society, self-driving cars would be a great thing, because this job called driving wouldn't be necessary, and human labor...
Well, why self-driving cars, though, actually? Like, there are so many better ways to do that if you have, like, automated transport and shit. There are so many better ways to do that. Like, why would you do cars in the first place?
Labor would be much more productive. But in capitalism, self-driving cars would lead to, as Andrew Yang put it, riots in the streets. It would be a society...
Well, yeah, because they would keep on running into people. Including, especially black people, it turns out, because the algorithms somehow are more likely... I mean, there have been studies on the algorithms of these self-driving cars, and they have a habit of running into black people. Which, I mean, Andrew Yang probably would be okay with.
Wide crisis, and the fact that we're just a couple years away from self-driving cars is hanging over our economy as a curse. This isn't rational. In systems of the past, you've all heard me say it before, people were homeless because there wasn't enough housing. Only under capitalism are people homeless because there is too much housing.
I mean, and... No, people aren't homeless because there's too much housing. They're homeless because it is more profitable for that housing not to be used for the purpose of housing people. Like, I mean, he tries to take the concept of overproduction, which he doesn't really understand very well in the first place, and then he just uses it and he just sort of shoehorns everything into it.
Systems of the past, people were hungry because there wasn't enough food. But only under capitalism are people hungry because there is too much food.
Like, literally, he called people Malthusian for pointing out that there is more food than we need. That there is, like, literally more food than we could eat.
The little boy says to his father, "Why is it so cold?" He says, "Because I lost my job at the coal mine." He says, "Why did you lose your job at the coal mine?" He says, "I got laid off." And he says, "Why did you get laid off from your job at the coal mine?" He says, "Because there's too much coal."
Wow, I mean, he's so excited that he managed to get through this. This is like this is the closest thing to we've had some kind of narrative cohesion for going on like 3 minutes now. There has to be a whiplash coming. He's gonna start talking about like baseball or something just randomly.
That's capitalism. That's the problem with capitalism. And the artificial intelligence computer revolution, the great dynamic breakthroughs in human intelligence that we've created, they have outstripped the narrow limits and restraints of the capitalist system.
I'm not sure that's how that works.
Human creativity and human ability to reinvent our relationship with Mother Nature, to strive for a higher and more efficient mode of production, is no longer able to fit into the narrow restraints of an economy where profit for private owners defines.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, this is not new. Like, he's talking about this like he just realized it. Marx specifically was already saying, yeah, this can't go on much longer. In fact, if anything, if one of the main things Marx definitely got wrong, that did not age well, was his belief that actually capitalism was not going to last. That it was going to be, that it was not going to last much longer, after him. That it would actually fall down fairly soon, within his lifetime or not long thereafter. That capitalism has actually, the ruling class has actually managed to find ways to hold on to power in all sorts of interesting ways, including through fake-ass movements like this.
Finds production. And that is what is driving the crisis that is leading to dropping living standards around here. That is what is causing the crisis of global migration. That is what is
No,
causing...
that is not... Well... Okay. No... That is not really what is causing the crisis of global migration. First of all, the could we not? I mean, I know the Democrats have decided that they also want to treat refugees as a pest control problem. I don't think that we should be treating their existence as the crisis. If anything, they are going through a crisis. And that crisis, yeah, overproduction might play a role in it, but also the fact that they are ruled over by murderous fucks who are imposed on them by the U.S., like that Bukele asshole who basically voted for him, re-elected himself. And Tony Blinken, of course, celebrates that because he likes all the big fash. Like, I don't think that is the main reason. And it's worth noting, since Caleb never does, that most of the primary production that goes on is going on in the places that people are trying to get away from.
The capitalists of the United States to become more aggressive and push for a new world war around the world. That is what is causing the capitalists of the United States to fight with each other like they've never fought before in generations.
Yeah, I mean, it's not actually... He doesn't understand that capitalists are often in conflict with each other. It's like fucking basic Marxism that's kind of why the state is there, because capitalists and workers are in this fundamental conflict, but capitalists are also in fundamental conflicts all the time because their industries have different interests. I mean, this is nothing particularly... he acts like this is some novel thing.
It's all rooted in this problem of overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profit. And the answer isn't degrowth. The answer isn't to go backward. The answer isn't to say there's something inherently wrong with human progress.
Nobody's saying there's anything inherently wrong with human progress. And Caleb, I will be amazed if Caleb Muppet actually, at this point, manages to get a tolerably accurate definition of what degrowth is. Literally, he's already talking about... He's actually brought up examples of objective overproduction. I mean, usually when he talks about overproduction, it's only the sort of overproduction that, Marx and Engels talked about, where it was where it would potentially even be a shortfall in production if people could afford the shit. But they can't afford it, so stuff goes to waste. But, when he talks about food... He's talking about something where it is objective overproduction. There's just more than we could eat as a species. And half of it gets thrown away before it ever makes it to retail. Complete waste of time. And degrowth, part of what that would mean is not doing that. There is so much production that is going on that has no point, that does not benefit, the people who are the consumers of the product. Oh, of course he doesn't understand internal capitalist competition at all. He totally does not comprehend what that is. He's never explained why capitalists have any kind of conflict. He's never tried to provide anything. It's just his backdrop for explaining why, there are, essentially, he uses this for this conspiracy theory of, Bread Chew being the CIA and whatever. But, let's see.
Answer is to say that we need to liberate the creativity of the next generation.
By seizing the means of production and operating them for human need rather than to produce commodities for exchange value, which would inherently mean that we would most likely producing a lot less of quite a few things, because planned obsolescence makes absolutely no sense in a system that is not producing commodities for profit. Is that what you're saying, Caleb?
From the artificial restrictions and the narrow restraints of the profit system. One thing that we see a lot of now is frustrated, creative youth.
FCY.
Young people, young men, young women, who know that they're capable of doing something great. There's probably a young person right now sweeping the floor at McDonald's, or
And looking at Caleb Maupin with frank amazement that anyone actually would deliberately go out of their way to hear him speak. Because, like, there are people who are capable of something great. This motherfucker aspires to create something mediocre. Like, this is easily the most mediocre-ass cult I've ever seen.
or doing some other job where they're miserable, and they're saying to themselves, I'm miserable because I know I could be doing something beautiful right now. I could be
Sleeping, smoking weed, doing literally just about anything. Because he also doesn't understand about alienation. Like, you never hear him talk about alienation, which is kind of an important concept. It is actually, I mean, I would have to say, one of the best things that Marx came up with. Really, the fact that people are just sort of, you know, have absolutely no connection to what they're doing all day. They're just doing it so that they can survive capitalism for another day. And they don't give a fuck, really, what they're producing or what service they're providing. They just sort of mechanically go through the motions.
designing something. I could be studying engineering. I could be studying science.
Why don't you go and do that, Caleb? I mean, and just, you know, just do that.
Contribute.
I mean, you could be studying Marx, then maybe you would at the very least get some of these things right.
All my society has given me is a low-wage, short-term service sector job. It's given me a phone to dazzle me. It's legalized all kinds of...
I get a phone to dazzle me. Yeah, I mean, don't you, we're all dazzled by our phones, right? I mean, they're just dazzling.
drugs that I can use and screw myself up with, and my potential is
and my job won't even let me do them because they drug test me.
not being utilized. And
That is, yeah, of course, that is what people are totally, I mean, everybody's just, all they want is to have their potential utilized.
frustration that so many young people have in this country right now. They say young people are lazy, they don't want to do anything. Bullshit.
Exactly.
When people are 19 years old, 20 years old, 22, 23, that's when they want to go out and do things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get to be 44 and it's like, yeah, fuck that. Things suck. I just want to lie around with cats. Some of them might even want to be dentists because they have a tooth fetish.
But because some boss can't make a profit hiring them to do it, they don't get to do it. And they exist in this state of frustration, going, I'm capable of something more. I have potential inside of me, and my society isn't letting me get it out.
What's the point of tying a tie and wearing that fucking sweater so you can't see it? I mean, I get that he wants to avoid looking too much like an undertaker.
And that feeling is all over this country. And if you want to talk about all the problems that we've got with opioids and suicide and shooters and all of that, you look at that frustrated creativity. When people want to go build and create and build into the future, and they're
To build and create and build.
told, no, just go the other way. It's the worst feeling in the world.
Just, what the fuck does just go the other way mean?
Amen.
I'm a little older now. I'm not officially a youth anymore. Did you know that?
Motherfucker, you never were. You were a fully formed junior high vice principal when you came out of the womb.
I'm going to be 36 in a few days, and I'm not officially a youth anymore, but I know what it's like to be a...
Christ, I can't believe this motherfucker's 36. Because there's something about his entire presentation that makes him feel like he's 60.
frustrated, creative young person. And that's how I found out about this guy. So...
Okay, I can't see from here. I'm not getting a good look at that. Does that picture ring a bell to anybody?
I was a frustrated, creative teenager in Ohio. I was
FCT or fucked.
14 years old, and I was bored, and so I got on the internet, and I thought that I would look and see if in the little town in Ohio that I grew up in, it's called Orrville, it's where Smucker's jelly comes from, you can look it up.
Fucking Arial font where progress and tradition meet. God, that sounds like... How has he not stolen that as the fucking CPI slogan?
Right? Home of Bobby Knight, the basketball coach. That's the celebrity that we claim. I'm from Orrville, Ohio, and I just thought I would Google on the internet to see if there had ever been another
Hey, that's a good place to Google on the internet.
from Orrville, Ohio. And I thought, has there
Well, that's to say a communist.
ever been anyone in the history of my little town of 10,000 people who was a communist? And I Googled and I found out about Carl Geiser.
He looks a bit like Wallace Shawn. Yeah, that motherfucker has always been 40. Oh, okay, so this guy was in the Lincoln Brigade. Okay. Jewish guy from Orrville, Ohio. Wait, he's gonna say something nice about a Jewish person? That's a rarity. Okay. Married, Sylvia Segal. God, Jewish in small town Ohio. That sounds rough. Okay, and then he moved over to the Mac Paps, which was the Canadian International Brigade, apparently. Here, let me just drop this link. So, okay, so there was somebody from Orrville, Ohio, who did something way more worthwhile than anything Caleb's ever done.
And that's this man, Carl Geiser. And Carl Geiser was born in Orrville, Ohio. And he went to Orrville High School, and he was a pretty high achieving student, so he went to Cleveland State University and he studied electrical engineering. And he graduated and he became an electrical engineer.
Well, who cares?
The United States was having, at that point...
Like, why are we talking about this guy? We're talking about this guy because he was narratively flowing for too long at a time. So we just had to switch over and talk about a guy from Orrville, Ohio who was in the Mac Paps.
A Great Depression. There weren't many jobs for electrical engineers, but there was another country where there were a lot of jobs for electrical engineers. And that was the Soviet Union. And he went over to the Soviet Union to help Stalin set up those new hydroelectrical power plants that they were building and help electrify parts of the country that had never had it before. And he was over there in the Soviet Union building and constructing, and he was blown away by
building and construction.
He saw. And he came back to the United States from the Soviet Union, and he joined the Communist Party of the United States of America. Carl Geiser joined the Communist Party.
Wow. Like, what the hell does this have to do with anything?
Because he saw what socialism was achieving. A lot of people joined the Communist Party.
Like, we're 24 minutes into this, and I still don't know what the fuck he's going to be talking about. Like, there is just zero prefiguring of anything.
Back in that time, right? I mean, it wasn't something, he was the only one to have done that. But what made Carl Geiser unique...
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably wasn't the only one to have done that, Caleb.
The reason he's got a Wikipedia page, and he's, remembered, is Carl Geiser signed up to join the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. Woo!
Where's their Lincoln head, though?
Fascists were looking to overthrow the Spanish Republic, the communists of Spain called for their comrades around the world to come and volunteer to fight fascism in Spain. And so thousands of young American men went to Spain and fought. And Karl Geiser was actually taken prisoner. And he was a prisoner of war in fascist Spain. And he almost died. If they had found out what his rank actually was, they would have shot him. But his comrades concealed
Yeah, he was a commissar.
his rank and did not reveal how high up he was, so they didn't execute him. And eventually Roosevelt got him traded back to the United States in a prisoner exchange.
Oh, well, so we got a nice mention of Roosevelt, because FDR is like his emotional support social democrat.
And he came back to the United States, and he's a hero of the Spanish Civil War, a leader of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. When you think about the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, that points to an aspect of our movement that it's really important to understand. There's a famous writer named Sherwood Anderson. You ever heard of Sherwood Anderson? He wrote Winesburg, Ohio. He was a
Sherwood, okay, never heard of him. Okay. Subjective and self-revealing works. Moved to Panama. Had lots of wives. Holy shit. He had 4 different spies. Nervous breakdown. Novelist. Okay. Why, yeah. Why, okay, why, any guesses? Actually, we're running out of time at this point. Any guesses why we're talking about Sherwood Anderson, who I had to look up because I've literally, like, I grew up in Ohio. In, like, miles and miles away from fucking Orville. But, like, we had enough, like, state trivia shit in school, like anyone does. But I do not recall ever having heard of Sherwood Anderson. Why the hell are we talking about him? Let's find out.
A novelist. And at one point, Sherwood Anderson was asked, what's the difference between a socialist and a communist? What's the difference? And he said, I don't know the technical difference, but it seems to me like the communists, they're the ones who mean it.
Oh, that's right. He's used that quote before. Like, so I mean, there's no indication that he actually. Let me see. Was he? No, I mean, as far as I can tell, he wasn't any kind of communist. He wasn't, politically organized in any way, as far as, I mean, I'm just looking at a wiki biography, which, your mileage may vary. I just wanted to see if there was anything of interest. But, I mean, his stuff, he's so pleased with him, so look at his fucking face. He's so pleased that he pulled off this reference. This is just fucking random neural firings. Yes, it does revolve around name dropping. I'm sure he's got that Lincoln head in his bedroom. And he probably has somebody stand behind it and stick like a paddle out Lincoln's nostril to spank him that way. 'Cause he has a thing about being spanked by a giant Lincoln head. So we learned a lot today. We learned that the reason that Joyce Kilmer wrote a really sappy poem about how beautiful trees are is because in 4 years he was going to go off to World War I after that started, which it hadn't yet. And that the poem about how nice trees are, that was an example of the pessimism that war brings out in people. We learned that you can just you can actually prepare stream of consciousness. We learned that, I mean, I've seen like 4th grade book reports that are more coherent than this thing. It's like, and then there's another thing, and then, okay, and now we're going to talk about this other guy. And this other guy, he did some stuff. He did a whole bunch of stuff. And it was really cool stuff and stuff. But now we're going to talk about this guy. And this guy said something. And now we're done with that guy. And it's like, how are people sitting through this? How are people, like, managing? Are they just is it morbid fascination? Do they just want to see what happens eventually if he gets to a point? I mean, this is 25 minutes out of an hour and 5 minutes, and the pointlessness is remarkable. Okay, thank you to everyone who joined. Glad to see you. As always, I will be back next Friday at 4:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time on YouTube for the hyperpolyglotting stream where I play some games and talk language stuff. And then, of course, at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, Friday and Saturday, for the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel, and I look forward to seeing you all there.